Hello, I am Super Orange Cat, and last night Toonami aired the second episode of Sword Art Online: Alicization War of the Underworld. And while the first episode was this really amazing character study into Alice as a character, the second episode was about 24 minutes long. Now, let's start. I'm just gonna kind of go over the synopsis of the episode and kind of just give my commentary as we go along. It's kind of the easiest way to do this. So, without further ado, here we go. Episode begins with the end of the cliffhanger from the last episode, with the nearby village of Rulid being completely on fire, and Alice noticing that her sister is gone. Sister's liking the village, so she decides she has to go over there and fight. So she goes over there, tells the men, hey, you need to leave. These goblins mean business. And the guy's like, oh, you're the girl that went to the dark territory. You're the witch that brought him over. You don't know what you're doing. And then she just takes off her petticoat, reveals her knight armor. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm an integrity knight. You should probably leave. I'm of a higher rank than you. Then they're like, oh, well, you're higher rank than us, so I guess we'll let you do what you want. So her dragon just shoots fire at a bunch of these goblins. And then basically, like any good girl with daddy issues, she takes out all of her frustrations on half of the Arkansas Razorbacks linebacking core. And then she basically tells them, I don't know you, you don't know me, but if you come near here again, I'll rip your nuts off. So then promptly they get scared, they cry, they pee, and possibly even shit and cum. And then they decide to go back to the dark territories. And then everyone's just surprised at this, including her sister, who apparently after 4 months didn't know that they had a dragon or that Alice was an integrity knight. And I can understand Alice wanting to hide those things, but at the same time, you have a sister who doesn't know much about her older sister, is desperate to know about what happened to her. So you would think she would snoop around and she would definitely find the dragon. It was like in a barn or some covering area not that far away. And also the whole integrity knight stuff, did the sister not find the armor anywhere? Like Alice is clearly probably hiding the armor, but you would think if she's had enough free time, not around her sister, that she would snoop around and eventually find the armor and know that she was an integrity knight, but I digress. Those are small issues compared to some of the really big issues in this episode that we have a little while later. So basically that's it. And then she leaves with Kirito on a dragon without her sister, saying, hey, I hope I can come back and you'll know me as Alice Zuberg again and not just as Alice Integrity Knight 30, which is kind of this nice little heartwarming moment there. So at the end of this plot line of this episode, you have Alice going with Kirito, flying somewhere. We don't know where yet. And then you have the second half of the episode start, which is a continuation of the cliffhanger at the end of Alicization, where the ocean turtle was under attack by G.I. Joe Edgelord Division. So, and it shows them going into them going to the main office and being like, okay, how do we get this? How do we get this bread, fellas? And they're like, oh, they're probably all hiding in the bunker room because, I mean, that's the only place they could be because we just took over the rest of the ship. And that kind of just ends this plot line. And then it goes back 10 minutes earlier in media res style, where you have Asuna Rinko finally learned the name of the cute scientist named Rinko, along with the guy who looks like a samurai and the nerd guy. Don't even remember their names at this point, honestly, because they're not that remarkable characters. And you have Asuna. Look like for a brief second, she was actually starting to look like a good character by her holding up the guy saying, oh, if my boyfriend doesn't come out of this live, I will fucking murder you. And then she puts him down and starts crying because we can't have her have any good character moments, you know? And then all of a sudden, and then he basically describes to him what's going on through another 12 minutes of exposition saying, what happened, Kirito? It's like, okay. So he was in calling us, and he had these emotions that were deep and complex because Yu-Gi-Oh just died and he thought Alice sacrificed himself. So when they cut the power to our ship, that fried him, and because of the emotions, that's why he's like a vegetable, which would have made a lot more sense if they left out the emotions part. They could just be like, oh yeah, he was in some weird state between our world and his world, and them cutting the power kind of fried him, and that's why he's a vegetable. And that would have made a lot more sense. Definitely would have made sense within the universe. And that's a very difficult thing any media, if you're creating some type of in-world rules. Like, for example, the type of AI they're developing is something that, as far as we know, doesn't exist in our world. So the show had to kind of create its own rules for how this would work. And although this season does a somewhat better job than previous seasons at establishing in-world rules, there are some very present issues that really came to the forefront in this episode. Like, first off, they mentioned, okay, why Kirito is in this like vegetative state. Like, how they described it was, okay, this cloud is his flux light. This weird black hole in the middle of it, that's the part that got fried out of him, and that's what turned him to a vegetable. Okay, that's fine as a personal state, as like a nice little statement, like a visual aid for it. And then the nerd guy, keeps describing it, and the way he describes it make it seem more like it's an impulse control thing. Because he referred to the female scientist and said, "Hey, you know how you want a second helping of this food? Like, how often do you get it? Oh, I never get it, but like national, but reasonably, you want to get it, but you stop yourself from getting it," which is describing impulse control. It's like, oh yeah, that's what's wrong with Kirito. It's like, no, he doesn't have impulse control. He can't function. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, dude? And then also, and this is not even the weirdest, most egregious thing, because that's just like a little scientific error within the show. There's one thing they mentioned in this that completely destroyed the whole concept of this upcoming season. They mentioned they're talking about the whatever military G.I. Joe Edgelord division that's attacking them, and they speculate, we think we might know who's behind this. If it is who we think it is, they know about Alice, they know about the project, and they're here for Alice's flux light. And also they had this weird little quip where it's like, well, whatever mercenaries I got, they weren't Asian, which I thought was like, that's a weird little racial thing there. And then they mentioned like, well, so we know it's not the government. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot this is Japan, so yeah. And then you ultimately have this like, and they keep talking about the concept of, okay, the flux lights of all the citizens are in this massive cube. Each flux light is like a tiny cube in all these giant cubes. And it's described this way, they could physically extract it using some key device that they have. And since they're talking about the person that's probably behind the other military group was aware of it, they probably have a key of their own, strongly implying they can access Alice's flux light outside outside the world of Alicization. And then they mention, well, then they'll have to go, but then it's like, but they could also go in and get it, which really just seems like an easy job, but with a lot of unnecessary steps, which, let's be honest, if you watch the promos, you know that's exactly what's going to happen. They send their own people into the world of Alicization. And then you have this thing where it's like, oh, but yeah, so they're going to try to do that. So we need to make sure that Kirito can get Alice for us, but he can't because he's a vegetable right now. And ultimately, it's just now this thing where Kirito is a vegetable, but Alice is flux, and he knows he needs to get Alice in her flux light and get her out of there. And then you have these mercenaries who apparently also know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they want. And the cliffhanger at the end of the episode implies they know exactly who Alice is. So you have that. And the reason why this makes no, like, the whole thing makes no sense is, why would they need to go into the world of Alicization if there was a manual way they can get it? And it's not like the people there can stop them. They're already busted into the ship. We already know they have explosives of some sort. It's made pretty aware that at least of the main cast on the turtle of Asuna, Rinko, and the two other guys, none of them have like guns or any weapons to defend themselves or anything that they have. So really, it's people with mass artillery. They could just storm in, use the key, and just take it that way, which is probably the easiest and most obvious way to do it. But again, it's not as much fun for the viewer unless they actually go into the world and take Alice that way. So we have more fighting scenes. Kirito inevitably stopped being a vegetable, probably. And we already know Asuna goes into the world at some point. And it's probably going to be something where it's like, he's going to go in the world to save Kirito, but we all know it's going to end with some BS where he ends up saving her or some crap. or Alice saves her. And then you have this waifu war, which, by the way, Alice is a much better waifu than Asuna. Neither of them are waifu material for me, but like Alice, I like Alice a lot more than Asuna so far. So, I mean, that's just my own damn opinion. What do you guys think of this episode? I thought it was a pretty healthy step in the wrong direction. Not nearly as good as last week. And I'm not saying the show's souring on me. It really isn't, but it's starting to go back to the level of quality that Alicization had for me, which was kind of in the middle. Wasn't too high, wasn't too low. What do you guys think? What's your opinions on this episode? Leave your opinions down below. If you like this content, if you want me to keep doing these videos about Alicization, about War of the Underworld, please like this video. Please subscribe and hit the notification button. I am Super Orange Cat, and that is all.